Welcome back. Welcome back. Welcome back to the podcast Indestructible Soul. Your host, Mr. Jonathan Beauregard. It's been a couple of weeks. A lot of things has happened. I want to welcome everybody back. Thank you for your continued support. And today we're going to continue our series on fatherhood, particularly Black fatherhood. Um, but before we get there, I'm happy. I know we talked a little bit about, I try not to go too far into politics, even though I did a whole show on politics. Um, but we got a new president elect Joe Biden. And for the first time in history, I'm so proud. We not only have an African American female in the vice president seat, South Asian, African American, female in the seat of vice president. So in our lifetime, we got to see a black president, now a black vice president, and a female vice president. I'm proud and I'm happy. More importantly, to get Mr. Trump out of office, and I think it's hilarious, but we all predicted it that he was going to whine and kick and scream his way out of office and throw a tantrum probably for the next 4 years. So I don't think any of us are surprised, but nonetheless, I'm pleased. Now, here's one thing I will say: America is still America. So all of a sudden, Trump didn't bring racism in, and he definitely didn't take it out. He exposed it. So thank him for that. That we get to see, and the world got to see exactly who America is. Now we have to hold him to the fire, and we have to continue to demand a black agenda. We have to continue to demand that they create policies that specifically address and benefit African Americans, not minorities, but African Americans. We have to continue to pressure them for a specific black agenda for getting rid of systematic racism, getting rid of mass incarceration, the wealth gap in this country, and so forth. So we have to continue, but I'm happy and I'm here. I reached out to several people to be on several fathers to come on the show, maybe next week. Um, Reached out, didn't get the response I wanted, but it is what it is. But before I get into the topic, I'm excited. So, as you all know, I'm a licensed therapist, marriage and family therapist, and I started my private practice this year, and I'm excited. And I'm going to be making some big announcements within the next week or so when it comes to the private practice Beauregard therapy. I don't talk about it much on the show, but big things are happening. God is blessing, and hopefully within the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be making some big announcements in terms of um, where the private practice is going. So I'm happy about it. So I wanted to continue the show, and there's so much information that I want to talk about, so many different aspects of Black fatherhood that I want to address or need to address that, I can't do it in one show. And even what I want to talk about today, I know I can't cover it all in today's show. So last week or a couple of weeks ago, one of the things I set out to do was to dispel the myth that most Black families do not have two parents or Black fathers in the home. So, as we know, I'm not going to go back into all the details. I'm not going to go back into all the statistics. One of the things that we do know is that there are more Black families with Black fathers or with fathers than there are Black families without fathers. So we can dispel that myth and the assumption that most of our families do not have two parents or do not have a father in the home. So there's statistical, hard facts, data to prove that. There's also hard facts and data to prove that when it comes to our counterparts, meaning Black fathers, those who are in the home, when compared to Hispanic fathers, when compared to white fathers, not only are we in the home, but we are more active and involved in our children's life. And one of the things that they did is they looked at different aspects of family life, homework, sports, school, and things like that. And what they found was that Black fathers, when in the home, is more involved in our children's lives compared to Hispanic and white fathers. You could check the data yourself. And the reason why I thought that was important to talk about is because we have to change that myth, but at the same time, we got to continue to move forward to not only restore the Black father into the family, but we have to continue to move forward to dispel the myth of that Black men don't raise their children. Now, so today's topic is basically, the punchline is Black fathers matter. And I'm going to talk about why Black fathers matter. But I got to give things historical context and I have to set it up. So the black man or the Black father has a very unique position in this country. We have had to face things that other men, Hispanic, white, whatever, Asian, we've had to overcome obstacles that other races did not have to overcome. Now, I know people always want to, when we bring up slavery and things like that, it's way bigger than slavery, and I'm gonna talk about it. People want to say, well, that's so long ago. Let me put how not long ago slavery was into context and why it's important in this topic. When we talk about not only Black fathers, but we talk about the Black family, how the Black father, the Black man, was systematically ripped away from the family. Systematically. Now, so when we talk about slavery being a long time ago, let's put it into context. So I did the math, at least in my head, and somebody can correct me. We're 7 generations out of slavery, 7. My great grandmother, so I have my grandmother and my great grandmother, right? My great grandmother was a slave. Do the math on that. Now, when we talk about not just slavery ripping away the family, but taking the man out of the family, that continued. So even after, the Emancipation Proclamation, there are several things that continue to rip the Black male out of the family. So we got slavery as one. Then we have mass incarceration. So when you have a system, so you could say, Black men didn't have to go to prison. Black men didn't have to do the things that they did to go to prison. Okay, whatever. But at the same time, when you have a system that has disfranchised you, and we have to turn to things untraditional, sometimes crime. But then when you look at how crimes were judged more harshly for African American men, and mass incarceration and things like that ripped us away from the family. So not only did you have slavery, but then you had mass incarceration. And then check this one out. Here's another one that people still to this day don't understand is the welfare system. So you got After slavery, you got incarceration, then you have the welfare system that continued to keep, not only keep the black man out of the family, but demonize the black man as being lazy, not wanting to work, and not wanting to take care of their family. Now, here's one that most of you probably will never think about when we're talking about disfranchising men and fathers out of the home. And I wonder if you can guess what it is, but I'm gonna tell you anyway. The school to prison pipeline. Let's talk about that real quick. So one of the things that we know for African American men, African American boys, when we have an educational system, which is basically the prelude to prison, because even at a very early age, we begin to disenfranchise boys. We begin to take them out of the school system, suspend them, stigmatize them, so forth and so on. And there's clear proof of the school to prison pipeline, which then further damages the black family. Think about that. So the problem is, and what people, even us as black people, we talk about deadbeat dads all the time. We talk about, or we've bought into this notion that black men don't want to take care of their kids. But the problem is, and we want to call them baby daddies and all these other things, but the problem is we never take into account how in this country we are systematically taken out of the family. We were systematically ripped away from our kids. Nobody wants to talk about that. So people often want to dismiss. And when I say people, I include us in that, but I'm talking society. They often dismiss that we've had to overcome, meaning black men had to overcome hurdles that other nationalities, other cultures have not had to deal with in this country. Hispanics and whites have not had to deal with mass incarceration, have not had to deal with the school to pipeline prison system, has not had to deal with systematically ripping, the family away, due to slavery and other forms of systematically removing the black man out of the family. Now, here's the problem, black women. You guys bought into it. You guys bought into it. So what do I mean by that? And I'll go ahead and say it. For child support and welfare, you bought into it, and you have bought into and became culpable in keeping the black man out of the family and keeping black men away from their sons and their daughters, but particularly their sons. You have become culpable because you bought into the idea of this system. So sometimes we want to talk about systematic racism, but now we got to talk about ourselves. It's very difficult to move forward. It's very difficult to make changes if we don't look at self. Now, I'm not saying that there's just not some flat out deadbeat dads out there. I get it. I'm not talking about them. But I am talking about how we as a people have bought into the system and have assisted in taking the black man out of the family. Now, let me back up real quick. Here's another thing. Here's my opinion. It is time, if we're going to move forward with any black agenda, we have to put the black family back in place. Now, does that mean that everybody's going to get along in the sense that, okay, if you're divorced or if you're separated, never married, okay, all of that's fine and dandy. But at the same time, we have to allow black men to build relationships with their children. And for those who are still in the family and still have their family together, if you expect for us as a people to move forward, we have to put the black man back in his rightful place. which is at the head, at the lead of the family. I too often see black men who are in the home have to compete and have to jock for a position in the family with their woman. Because systematically and mentally, we have bought into the system. And instead of allowing the black man, the black father, its rightful position in the family, its rightful position in his children's life. Here's the thing: God set forth the natural order in terms of the role of mom, the role of dad. We play two different roles, all out of love, but we play two different roles. But before I felt like I needed to set it up that way so we can have context, in the sense that when we talk about how black fathers matter, but I have to talk about how we got here. And we didn't get here because you have a bunch of black men who don't want to raise their children. It's the exact opposite. And so what happens is, when you talk about a father who's not raising his kids, you got to talk about the reasons why. You got to talk about the context of it. So let's move forward a little bit. So when we talk about fatherhood, I want to talk specifically why black fathers matter to their sons, right? Here's the thing. People often ask the question, can single women raise black boys? The answer is yes, no, and maybe. But the fact of the matter is, sure they can. But at the same time, is there something missing? And is there something naturally about a father and son relationship that a mother cannot fulfill? And the answer to that is yes. There's certain things and there's certain aspects to a father-son relationship that cannot be replaced by mom. Now, when I say father, sometimes that's going to be biological, sometimes that might be step, sometimes that might be some type of surrogate father, nonetheless, a father. Here's the thing. There are so many, if you hear some banging or something, they're doing some construction upstairs. There are so many factors that we overlook when we talk about father-son relationship. And the effects, and maybe I'll talk about this more next week, but the effects and the problems that are created when there is no father-son relationship. Now, but here's why fathers are important. And the problem is, can women, like I said, there could be some type of surrogate father. Can women teach boys how to be men? Maybe. I really want to say no, but I'm going to say maybe. Because, maybe that woman had a strong father figure, and she can instill some values that, whatever. But here's what I'm getting to. When we talk about a father-son relationship, there is an innate connection. There is an innate connection between father and son. Here's one thing that fathers have to take responsibility for, and here's the women who deny fathers to have relationships with their son. You have to take responsibility for. Now let's talk about development real quick. There is an innate connection between a father and a son. And oftentimes what happens is, not oftentimes, it's how this works. As a son, how do you think I begin to find my identity? How do you think I begin to find what it's supposed to be like dealing with the world, dealing with my own boyhood to manhood, dealing with who I am as a boy without my father? My father, or the father, is the first example of who I'm supposed to be. One of the things that people don't understand about boys, as we grow up, we begin to mimic other males around us or other people around us. So what happens is, if I don't have a father figure, but not only a father figure to see how this is supposed to work and pay attention to this, not only, but what about when I'm dealing with different emotions and trying to understand who I am? That begins with that father son connection. And oftentimes what happens is we wonder why, and I get a lot of clients who struggle with teenage boys, is and they wonder why at such certain age these boys begin to struggle or begin to bump heads with their moms when their dads are not around. Because there's certain things that you can't do for him emotionally and mentally that they're looking for from their father or a male figure at best. One of the things is, in order for me to understand myself as a boy, I need my father. For one, I'm watching him, I'm listening to him, I'm studying him. When I talk to him, I get feedback. So what happens often when that father and son connection isn't there, our boys struggle. For one, we don't know who we are. We struggle with that. Here's the thing. When we're talking about personal development, perseverance, the different characteristics and values, we learn those things as a young kid. So, and a lot of times we can learn them from our mother, but at the same time, when I have a father figure in the home and who's present, who's active, and when we're talking about development academically, development socially, development in terms of self-esteem and self-confidence, a positive father will help those things along and help instill those things. But oftentimes what happens is we forget and we get in the way of that. And because of our stuff as parents, for some reason, we don't allow that father and son connection. Fathers parent different than mothers do. And not to say that fathers aren't nurturing, but one of the things we have to understand is that as a man, but as a black man, the world is different for us. No one coddles us. Sometimes we'll find a woman that'll do it, but those are for the ones who want it. So here's the thing. When we're talking about personal development, personal identity, self-sufficiency, self-confidence, self-esteem, understanding who I am as a boy, that starts with my father-son relationship. Here's the thing, and people oftentimes dismiss this or underestimate it. Why do you think so many young boys turn to who are absent of a father? And it doesn't necessarily mean their biological father. Why do you think so many boys turn to other things outside of the family trying to build connection? trying to build a sense of belonging. That first sense of belonging comes from a father. So why do you think oftentimes turn to gangs and other things when there's not a father in the home? Because that's how we relate to the world. One of the things is I look at my father, I look at the people around me, and I look at my family, and that tells me who I am. And when a father is absent, what do you think that says to me as a young boy? What that says to me is that I'm not good enough. Think about that. As I begin to grow and I'm trying to figure out these things, when I'm trying to figure out, okay, I don't know who I am. I don't feel good about myself. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to do different things. Those type of skills, those type of values, and to be able to input that oftentimes come from a father. Here's what I see a lot. And I'm not saying mothers, because I was raised by a mother. I'm not saying mothers can't do that. But oftentimes it comes with a price. When women raise boys, it oftentimes comes with a price. And one of those things is selfishness. Oftentimes it comes with men who are expecting women to take care of them. It often comes with a lack of resiliency because we expect the world to cater to us. So I'm not saying women can't do it, but oftentimes it comes with side effects. And I don't know if people realize that. Here's the thing. When you have involved fathers, it helps create well-adjusted youth. Kids who are more balanced, but I'm talking particularly about boys. We're talking about discipline. We're talking about a strong self-identity. We're talking about having an understanding that everything doesn't come easy. We're talking about building a sense of confidence. One of the things boys do is they look at the male figure in their life, especially at an early age, and they begin to see themselves. That's why it's so important. Follow me on this. That's why it's so important. If you're in an abusive relationship, your son doesn't need to see that because what is he being taught? He's being taught that that's how men are supposed to treat women. So I'm talking well adjusted, I'm talking well involved, and I'm talking men who are really trying to do the right thing and raise their kids correctly. The other thing is we have to, as a family system, have to allow our men to take their rightful position back in the family. So let me shift focus real quick. Real quick. Here's some things that boys need from their father. Follow me on this. So if you got there's some dads out there listening. You may or may not agree with some of these things, but here's a few things that boys need from their fathers. The first thing they need, and they're not in any particular order, is they need fathers to show them that respect and love for their mothers. What do I mean by that? Here's the thing. If you're married, if you're no longer married, if you're separated, if whatever your situation is, fathers need to show their sons mother respect and love. Why is that important? Think about it. Remember, your sons are looking at you, and you are the first example to them of how to treat women. Think about that. So even if you're no longer with that person, the things that we see, the disrespect, the battling, the fighting, the name calling, the tearing down each other, your sons are watching. Sons are watching. So regardless if you're married or not, regardless of how you feel about their mother, your sons need to see you show them respect. Here's the second thing. Some of you may not agree with this, but sons need their fathers to show them that they're human, to show them their failures. What do I mean by that? A lot of times, believe it or not, fathers and sons get to a point, especially at a certain age, where they start competing with each other. I see a lot of fathers try to sabotage their sons because of their failures and because of their missed potential. But here's the thing, when fathers make mistakes, show your sons your mistakes. But the caveat to that is show them how to overcome them. Here's the thing. It's our job as parents, especially fathers, is to help teach resiliency, to help teach the fact that things aren't going to always be easy. Sometimes I fail. This is where I failed, but this is how I overcame it. I can't tell you how many men, teenagers, and boys that come to me because they're depressed because of a simple failure. Because of a simple failure. Sometimes get so depressed, want to harm themselves, or they just want to give up because of a simple failure. Where do you think that's taught? Fathers teaching or showing kids that, look, I fail, I'm human, but then also supporting kids through their failures to help teach resiliency. Absent of that, absent of a father to show you that, is why our boys struggle with competition. That's why our boys struggle with when things get hard. There's 7 of these, by the way. Here's number 3. Sons need fathers to show them servant leadership. What do I mean by that? What do I mean by servant leadership? Be the leader, but as we all know, the best leaders serve. Oftentimes, when a man want to take charge of the house, not only do they want to take charge of the house, it's do what I say, and I'm gonna sit on my throne and do nothing while you guys do what I tell you to do. No, that's not the type of leadership we're talking about. We're talking leading a family from the front, but also understanding that you're there to serve. When your son needs you, when your daughter needs you, when the family needs you, you're there to serve, and you show your leadership by being a servant. Which means when your son needs advice, you're leading by giving them sound advice, but you're being a servant by sitting there and listening and paying attention. Here's number 4. Here's what else sons need from their fathers. They need you to be there. They need you to be present. Here's the thing. Whether you live in the home or not, be present. I got daughters, but I got nephews and now have a grandson. Here's one of the things my daughters can never say is that I was not there. I may work a lot now, but they can never say I was not there. We have to be present. Granted, if you're not living with the kid's mom, if you're separated, whatever it may be, you have to be present, even if it's by phone, whatever it may be. When your sons need you, you have to be there. Here's another thing. Here's number 5. Sons need their fathers to show them love regardless of their choices. One of the things we start doing as parents is we get judgmental and we forget that we were stupid too. We forget the things that we did. And so when our kids mess up, they need us to show them love regardless of their choices. Here's the thing. Sometimes we need to sit back as parents and let them make their choices. And when they bump their head, guess what we do? Show them love. We don't need to talk bad about them. Show them love. So regardless of our kids' choices, as a father, you still need to show your son love. One of the things that was said to me by a supervisor a long time ago, probably 20 plus years ago, and I never forgot it. And I incorporate it not only in my life, but I incorporate it when I work with people, is a child needs love when they least deserve it. Oftentimes, and I honestly think it's a reflection of ourselves, when kids mess up, we demonize them, we punish them, we put them down. I think that's a reflection of ourselves, but sometimes when kids mess up and make bad choices, that's when they need love the most. Fathers, number 6, they need you to affirm them. But if you're not there, how can you affirm them? What does affirming mean? Sometimes it could be simple as saying good job. Now, I often use my grandson as an example. He gets affirmed all the time. When he's out of pocket, he gets checked. But I don't care if it's something small. When he gets a that a boy, he gets the that a boy. He gets the high five. He gets the great job. He gets told how wonderful he is. Fathers, affirm your sons. Here's number 7. Fathers, your sons need discipline with love. Here's the thing, and I talk about this a lot too. When my grandmother disciplined you, and oftentimes you didn't get a whooping. My mama was the whooper. She was the one that grabbing switches and shoes and belts and all that stuff. She loved us, but don't get me wrong. But my grandmother, she gonna tell you about yourself, but then afterwards she's gonna love you. Here's the thing. We don't have to discipline our kids, especially our kids, but since we're talking about boys, we don't have to discipline them with shame. Fathers, when you discipline your sons, you have to come from a place of love. And here's the caveat. When you discipline your son, are you leaving them better off than before they did whatever they did to get in trouble in the first place? So here's the thing. Are they learning something? But most importantly, is their spirit still intact? Too often times, not only do we have a system in the world breaking our boys' spirit, it gets broken in the family. So when we talk about disciplining, it has to come from a place of love. I work with several parents and I see it. They're disciplining from a place of frustration and of place of anger. And what do they do in the process? They tear their kids down. I have to refrain from using examples because, you know, people's, confidentiality and things like that. But it happens a lot where we have this knee-jerk reaction, and out of anger, we discipline our boys, and then next thing you know, they walk away feeling bad about themselves because we're not doing it out of love, we're doing it out of payback. And here's the reason why. Check this out. Here's the reason why. Because us parents are so selfish and self-centered that we think our kids mess up to piss us off. Kids mess up because kids mess up, but we take it personal as a personal attack and a personal reflection of ourselves. So then what do? We punish out of anger and revenge, and we don't discipline out of love. I remember one time when I was a kid, and Jack, who was our father figure, I did something to him. I don't remember. He didn't whoop me. He couldn't whoop us, but okay, that's another story. But I remember he showed his disappointment. And he didn't yell, and Jack was a cusser. He cuss you out in a minute. But he showed his disappointment, but at the same time, in that disappointment, but he was still willing to do the things that he did for us. And that stuck me in the heart. I felt bad for upsetting him out of respect. So when we discipline fathers, it has to come from a place of love, not punishment. Think about that. So there's so much to talk about. There's so much to fix when we're talking about father and son relationships. And obviously I can't cover them all in one night. But here's the thing. We as a people, we as a Black family have to usher back in the Black father and allow them to do the job God asked us to do. We have proof, when allowed, we're the most involved parent, meaning fathers, out of any of our counterparts. But the ones who haven't made it back yet, and they still don't understand, they have some work to do. But at the same time, before we going around talking about deadbeat dads and all those things, we have to take into account the systematic oppression that created this scenario for Black families. You can't put it all on the Black man. You can't. It's not fair. But the flip side of that is we bought into it ourselves. So as they say, we perpetuated it ourselves. So I'm going to continue this series on the Black father, Black fatherhood, Black fathers matter. And next week, hopefully my guest can join me. But what I want to say is, as we move forward in this new era and we work on this Black agenda with this new president and this new vice president, we can't leave the Black father out of the equation. And here's my criticism of Black Lives Matter, not the statement Black Lives Matter, but the organization, is that they are systematically excluding the Black heterosexual male out of the equation. Do your research. So here's the thing. We deserve more credit as Black men. We deserve more credit as Black fathers. That doesn't mean that we don't have work to do, and that doesn't mean that we don't have things we got to make better. So for those of you who are struggling with Black fathers and building relationships, you could use me as a resource to help fathers and sons reconnect. So once again, I want to thank you guys. I want to thank you guys for continuing to support me in this podcast, supporting Beauregard Therapy. Big things are happening. God is blessing, and there's more to come. So I want to thank you all for joining me, and we're going to continue to fight. Good night. This has been Indestructible Soul. They want our souls, but they can't have it. We're indestructible. Thank you and have a good night.